And welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. Boy, we've got a great out there for you today. We gave it a little bit of a tease earlier, but back on April 6, 1966, in a suburb of Melbourne, Australia, at the Westall High School, there was a UFO sighting. It's one of the most famous UFO sightings, and particularly because it is completely unsolved. About 300 to 350 people, including high school students and teachers, saw a gray saucer-shaped craft about twice the size of a car descending, flying over their playground, and then landing in an area called the Grange. And strangely, some of these high school students leaped over the fence and ran out and saw this UFO. And when you hear the story about what happened to these people, it's almost unbelievable. Now, we've got a lot of clips here, so I'm going to jump right into them because I think they really tell the story a lot better than Morgan Streetman does. So let's listen here to some clips about the first sighting of this UFO.
I was precipitating various chemicals in order to make crystals, and I just happened to be looking out the window, thinking how to fudge my science report. What I saw directly south was something that I'd never seen before.
We were out playing sport on the oval. One of the kids yelled out, look up in the sky, it's flying saucers. And I remember we all looked up and it really was a flying saucer. I mean, from what you imagine, a flying saucer, it was a round silver disc. And it seemed to be very low over the school. And I remember kids screaming and running inside.
The student came in, was hysterical, leaned up against a sliding door, screaming, "There's a flying saucer in the oval." And of course everybody started to head towards the door, and the teacher said, "Sit down, it's not recess yet." And a few minutes later the bell went off.
Everyone started moving, like a whole lot of zebras being terrified by crocodiles. I went where the herd went.
These are some clips from a documentary called Westall 66, a suburban UFO mystery that aired on Australian TV in 2010. And I thought they were very interesting clips and kind of put some great flavor on this story so that you can really understand it. Now, what happened after they first saw it, that UFO flew over to the Grange? Let's listen to this.
Sort of stopped dead, and stopped dead in the air, and then it just sort of started descending straight down. And I'd say it got down about halfway up that gum tree or above the goalpost and sat there for a while, and then it just sort of lifted straight up and then just took straight off.
This thing went down behind the trees, then it came up, and it was like it had become aware of these planes coming in, and it just went woof and just left them like they were standing still.
And then it went across to an area called the Grange, which was a bit of a pine plantation behind the school.
And this is something they've never been able to explain, but here, some friends take off running after it. Tanya, and that's a name you need to remember for this story, Tanya and her friends take off.
A lot of the kids took off towards where it seemed to go, and it disappeared down behind the trees. So we all got through this fence and ran towards where it had appeared to land.
Tanya and I and this other girl, we were over the fence. Tanya was in the lead, and we ran towards where it was coming down. I lost sight of Tanya. She was in front of me.
A couple of girls got there faster than me. I was a bit slow, and they actually passed out. And apparently it did land, because when we got there, there was a great big round patch of flattened yellow, almost burnt, although I'm a bit sketchy on that. I can't remember if it was really burnt or whether it was just flattened, but it was sort of yellow, and the grass was all flattened in a swirly sort of a pattern.
Before I got there, the disc came back up again, so I stopped chasing it.
We looked up and we just saw this saucer type thing taking off, and it seemed to turn side on and just disappear into thin air.
Well, what about your friend Tanya?
I believe she did see it on the ground.
She did see it on the ground?
So I was given to believe, yes. But I went back to school, and Tanya went back to school and basically had gone all to pieces. There was definitely an ambulance on the Oval, and I was told that she'd been taken away in the ambulance, and that was the last time I ever saw her.
Wow.
She was just gone, and she never came back to school.
So Tanya, who made it out to the UFO, saw it, maybe even touched it, kind of lost her mind when she got back to school. And, of course, the headmaster told everybody not to talk about it.
That afternoon, our principal called a special assembly and told us all not to talk about it.
All I know is the whole school was told off. The headmaster says, "All you kids are nuts. It's a weather balloon. Don't talk about it."
Okay, now we got to get to this last clip because this is the coup de grace. What happened to Tanya? These people never saw Tanya again, but this clip, when I heard it, this freaked me out. Listen and see if you agree.
Can I ask what happened to the girl? You took her back to the school, the one that was hysterical. Is it Tanya? And she went into the hospital, and then you went to visit her at her place, and they said she didn't live there.
That's
Yes,
right.
I went to her house the following day.
Listen to this.
And an English-speaking woman opened the door and said there had never been a Tanya living there. Now, the problem with that is that Tanya's parents didn't speak English to start with. I think they were Yugoslavian. So I'd been to this house a lot of times and then was told, "No, sorry, you're mistaken."
Can you believe that? So these people from school, they come back. Tanya's hysterical. An ambulance takes her off. Nobody at the school ever sees her again. And the next day, a friend of hers who'd been over playing with her at her house many times goes over to the house. Can you imagine yourself in this scenario? Particularly a little kid, you go over to a house you've been to probably, I'm going to say, dozens or hundreds of times to play. You knock on the door. The people who answer the door are very strange to you, and you say, "Well, wait a minute. Where's Tanya?" And the people say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you must be mistaken. There's never been a Tanya here." I mean, can you even imagine that? I mean, the gaslighting of trying to tell you that something that you know is not true. What do you think about that, Padge? Or doesn't that give you goosebumps?
Well, as a child, you'd be so confused, and it would not comprehend. And I mean, where's Tanya today?
Yeah, well, they don't know. Tanya's never been seen or heard from again. And this is the Westall UFO incident, very famous incident, like we told you earlier. Even skeptics acknowledge the best skeptical explanation that they can come up with for this was that it was some kind of advanced military aircraft. That doesn't sound very believable to me. I don't know what you think, but you need to look into this. There's a lot more where this came from, including other interviews and programs on this that are fascinating. Check it out. Folks, I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.